I'm an Indigenous Australian. I'm a Fijian Indian Australian. I'm an Indian Australian. I'm a Somalian Australian. That is going to be how we understand ourselves, that we're united in this country as Australians.
Policies splitting families apart, removing children, sometimes banning their languages from being spoken.
And so I feel that Australia will change for the better, and Australians will really come to a new understanding of who they are.
So the Constitution is where we make an enduring commitment to listen to Indigenous peoples when we make laws and policies about them.
We're not changing the Parliament. The Parliament stays the same. We all vote, one value. All we're doing is we're saying the Indigenous people should have a voice to the Parliament.
Good day everyone, my name is Navneet Anand from Vaisajika Local and Global. I begin with by acknowledging the traditional custodian of the land and pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. Today's conversation is going to be very, very special and close to my heart. I have got two wonderful guests here with me, Mr. Noel Pearson and Dr. Shireen Morris. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
I feel proud and privileged to call Australia my home.
Yes.
What a wonderful place on this planet Earth we are living in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Voice to Parliament. We start with it. Your views on that?
So the Australian Constitution has an important missing element, and that is the recognition of the First Peoples of the country. We now have an opportunity after 120 years to complete the Constitution by recognising the First Peoples. And it has been a long road to get to this point, but we're now literally just months away from a referendum that will allow the Australian people to vote on this question. Will we recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the Australian Constitution?
Now, if I have to give my view, my answer is yes, we do. We need the First Nations voice. What do you think about it?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. You know, this week there was this Productivity Commission review of the Closing the Gap program, and it said what Indigenous communities have been saying for years and years and years. Basically, the report said that despite all the goodwill and despite lots of money spent trying to improve Indigenous disadvantage, we are failing abysmally to close the gap. And the Productivity Commission said it's because everything is top down. You know, governments way off in Canberra and bureaucrats make policies and programs about Indigenous communities around the country, but they often don't talk to those communities. They don't listen to those communities. They don't partner with the communities. It's all top down, right?
So there's a gap that needs to be bridged.
Absolutely. And if we want to improve outcomes, and if we want to get practical results in education and jobs and economic development in Indigenous community, the Productivity Commission has said yet again that governments need to listen to Indigenous communities. They need to do things in partnership, you know, where instead of imposing these solutions. So that's why this voice is so important. It's, as Noel said, it's an opportunity to recognise Indigenous peoples in the Constitution, but doing it in this practical way that will deliver real practical results for those communities and help Australia close the gap.
Mr. Pearson, I would like to know it from your view as well. How was this arrived at?
Well, this is a long campaign. This constitutional recognition has a long history, going back to the 1930s. Really, you know, the Indigenous leaders were calling for recognition in this country and a voice to the Parliament for many, many decades. And this latest phase that we've been involved in the last 15 years is really just a continuation of this. I had the great fortune of having this young lady join me as a law intern in 2011. And Shireen really has been a powerhouse for us and for our movement. She's both a constitutional expert, but she's also got a very clear political understanding. She has helped me in the past dozen years prosecute this thing. And so she brings this intersection between constitutional law and understanding of the political history of this process. As well, she's an extremely good advocate for the reform. So I felt very privileged that I've had the support of Shireen as my advisor. She has been my advisor for the last dozen years. And I think Australians little understand the decisive role that she's played in bringing this about.
Well, before I proceed, I would like to say thank you to Harish Velji, who has given me a chance to sit next to you two and try to have understanding more and more that I can bring it out to my audiences as well. Talking about the Uluru Statement from the heart, what does it exactly represent?
Well, it represents a consensus amongst Indigenous peoples about what form of recognition we want in the Constitution. Now, a lot of people said that, firstly, you're not going to get the constitutional reform agenda off the ground. Well, we did in 2007 when the Liberal Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, committed to constitutional recognition. And then people said, oh, well, we'll never get consensus amongst Indigenous people. Well, we did. And the Uluru Statement represents that consensus. It really was a process that went out over a year, consulted in all corners of the country, had many conferences in different parts of the country, and all came together at Uluru. And when the choice was made that we want a voice to the Parliament, we want a Makarrata Commission to make agreements between the Parliament and Indigenous First Nations groups, and we want truth-telling about the history of the country, that was voted on at Uluru, and there was like 97% consensus around that.
So how do we get the First Nation voice to the Parliament?
Well, the important thing is the vote. The vote will be held sometime probably in October. The government hasn't nominated exactly which weekend it's going to be held, but that's when the Australian people, I think 19 million or something, voters, it's up to them now. No longer up to the politicians. That's all behind us. You know, the question has been put through the House of Parliament, and now it's out there in the public. And it's up to the Australian voters now to answer the question, do you want to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of Australia?
Yes, we do. Dr. Morris, do we really need to get it added in the Constitution?
Absolutely.
Because some people will come and debate on that as well. Do we really need to have that Constitution?
Yes, we do for two key reasons, right? The first thing is this is about constitutional recognition, because when the Constitution was created in 1901, the Constitution actually included clauses explicitly excluding Indigenous people, you know. And ever since then, the Constitution has set in place a really top-down power dynamic. You know, the Constitution distributes power in this country, and it's given for Indigenous people, it's created for them a position of real powerlessness. The Uluru Statement talks about the torment of powerlessness that Indigenous people experience, because there have been decades and decades of these top-down policies by politicians and bureaucrats that have not been good for Indigenous people, you know. In the past, there were a lot of very discriminatory laws and policies, and maybe some of your viewers, I don't know if they know this history, but that includes laws denying Indigenous people the vote in some jurisdictions right up until the 60s, you know. Laws denying them equal wages for their hard work, sometimes non-existent wages for their hard work, policies splitting families apart, removing children, sometimes banning their languages from being spoken. And even though most of that harsh discrimination is in the past, today governments make well-meaning policies, like I said, but they fail to close the gap. because politicians don't know how to listen to Indigenous communities. That powerlessness goes right back to the Constitution, and that is what this is about, recognising Indigenous people in the Constitution in a way that fixes that unfair power relationship, right, and delivers real practical results. Now, the second reason is because the governments have set up Indigenous advisory bodies in the past, but they've been abolished. As soon as political priorities changed, or as soon as problems arose, they've been chucked out. That's because those bodies lacked the constitutional underpinning. That's an important thing to understand. The Constitution is enduring, right? It's where we as a country make permanent, enduring commitments. Because the Constitution's hard to change. It requires a referendum to change, right? It's only been changed 8 times since it was enacted. So the Constitution is where we make an enduring commitment to listen to Indigenous peoples when we make laws and policies about them. The permanence is the other reason that it's important this voice is guaranteed by the Constitution.
Mr. Pearson, once again, I would like to say thank you to the Indigenous people who own this land. For people like us and Dr. Morris calling Australia his home is definitely a privilege for all of us.
Thank you.
What are the guiding principles for this voice?
Well, the big thing we're doing is we're bringing the 3 parts of Australia together. And Shireen and I, in a sense, I represent the Indigenous. Shireen represents the multicultural unity of the country. And we went across to the Anglo-Celts in northern Sydney at Australian Catholic University, and we made the triangle. This is the future Australia. We're going to understand ourselves as Australians as having an Indigenous foundation, British institutions exemplified in our Constitution, and this fantastic multicultural unity where we're all equal, we're all Australian citizens, and we all look in the mirror and say we're Australians. You know, I want the children of the future to never leave the word Australians out. I'm an Indigenous Australian. I'm a Fijian Indian Australian. I'm an Indian Australian. I'm a Somalian Australian. That is going to be how we understand ourselves, that we're united in this country as Australians, and nobody's kind of got priority. We're all got priority. We're all equal. It's just that what we're doing here is we're bringing in the people, the original people, into the Constitution, you know, finishing that circle and completing the Commonwealth, but importantly giving a voice. We're not changing the Parliament. The Parliament stays the same. We all vote, one value. All we're doing is we're saying the Indigenous people should have a voice to the Parliament. And it's going to be important to do it. There's many practical benefits that will flow from that.
So what are the common myths and misbeliefs?
Well, there's a lot of them flying around, you know, that we're creating. On the one hand, something that doesn't go far enough, and that's on the left side. On the right side, it goes too far. Well, actually, the truth is that this is a common sense proposal that is in the middle, that is not too extreme left, not too extreme right, and it strikes the right balance. And so I feel that Australia will change for the better, and Australians will really come to a new understanding of who they are.
Because it's no veto, right? That's a key myth. No veto. It's just advisory. It's not a third chamber, you know. It's not a fourth arm of government. It's just constitutionally guaranteed Indigenous advisory body. The other common myth that you hear is this will divide us by race.
Correct.
That is incorrect, right? Completely wrong. As I said, the Constitution contained racially discriminatory clauses when it was created in 1901. There's still race-based discriminatory clauses in there, and Indigenous people have suffered more than any other group because they were treated like an inferior race. So when Peter Duffy...
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But this is about correcting that, right? Correcting that exclusion, that historic race-based exclusion and putting some positive inclusion, including those who were previously excluded, and ensuring that when government and parliament make laws and policies about them, they can at least give advice to make sure that those policies are fairer and better and more effective.
In brief, how will this voting take place, and what would make that vote to be a formal vote?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there'll be a referendum, similar to an election. So everyone needs to go and vote, but you need to write yes, right? It's not, you don't put a tick. You need to write the word yes in English.
So that would make that formal.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So it's a yes or no question. Are we saying yes to recognising Indigenous people in the Constitution through giving them an advisory voice in laws and policies made about them? We've got to say yes or no, and we've got to write the word in the box.
Mr. Pearson, how has been the response from the multicultural communities here in Australia?
Well, Indian Australians are a very strong support constituency for the voice. Very high levels of support, in fact. And I think Indian Australians understand the justice of this, and many of them are playing very active roles in the Yes campaign. Young people are involved, older people are involved. We're getting a very good groundswell. But not just the Indian community, the Chinese community, the Vietnamese community, we are getting and the Australian Lebanese community and other Muslim communities are very much behind us here. The ethnic Australia is really a very strong constituency for yes. We're really relying on them, but at the same time, we find it very promising in those communities.
Dr. Morris, what role can multilingual information can play in having this awareness to be generated to the best?
It can play a really important role, and there's some very good multilingual resources out there. This great website has been developed called multiculturalforvoice.org. And if you go there, you'll see that over 150 multicultural, ethnic cultural organisations across Australia have signed up, committing to advocate yes for this referendum. And multicultural Australians can also sign up to be an ambassador there for their communities. And on the resources page there, you can see links to lots of different language resources. So the Uluru Statement from the Heart has been translated into different languages, and the government has translated fact sheets, so all the information you need, it's available in all these different languages. So there is a lot of information in different languages.
Can you repeat the website once again?
Yeah, it's called multiculturalforvoice.org. So go there, check it out. There's also this great video that Rachel Perkins, that famous Indigenous filmmaker, she made this awesome video showing multicultural support for this. And it's a really beautifully filmed thing. So I encourage you to check it out. Maybe you can broadcast that on your channel as well.
We do that. Mr. Pearson, I understand that you have to go for the next program that's being organized by Mrs. and Mr. Dougal here in Blacktown itself. Once again, thank you to Aisha Amjad and Harish Velji, who got me a chance to sit next to you. But before we wrap up, what would be your final message to the communities?
I'm really appealing for your support in this referendum. We will make Australia whole. We'll bridge the gap. We will bring the excluded in to the main house of the Constitution, and I'm looking forward to support from the community at the upcoming referendum.
Thank you so much. Sincere thanks to Arvind Singh as well to make this video possible. I call myself a proud Australian of the Indian heritage and would continue to have that privilege to be living in this wonderful country. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.